Can I get anyone who can hear me to clap once? Clap twice? 3 times. Wonderful, wonderful. So this is the Soul in the Machine talk. You're in the right place if this is what you want to hear. First off, a show of hands. Who is this? Who is here as their first Labor Notes conference? Wow, wow. Who is here from another country? Excellent. Wonderful. All right, and then jumping right into the discussion at hand, who here has ever got into Pinterest? Did anyone ever get into Pinterest? Okay, we've got a few. And what happened to Pinterest? Yeah, it's trash, isn't it? Who here is tired of all the hype around AI? Yeah, that's right. We're already inundated with AI slop. People are acutely aware and already sick of it, especially younger people. Who here has seen the videos of students booing graduation speakers when they're promoting AI? Yeah. And this slop is generated at such a tremendous cost. It's estimated that by 2028, AI will consume 22% of the electricity in the United States. We have a proposed data center in my birth state of Utah that's projected to consume 9 gigawatts of energy, more than twice what the entire state of Utah uses. If it ever gets built, it will accelerate the drying out of the Great Salt Lake, making hundreds of square miles uninhabitable as clouds of dust blow across them. Then there are the myriad workers these LLMs are built upon. In Kenya, Guatemala, all over the world, paid a couple of dollars an hour through Mechanical Turk or other humans as a service. They do the models to do the annotating, the data labeling, and content moderating. And as a friend of mine once said recently, it's like a dumbwaiter technology used to obscure slave labor. We should be discussing these issues. We should be pushing back on unions building data centers, and we should do all we can to keep union funds out of AI companies. But our panel today is Soul in the Machine, resisting AI pressure on the character and quality of our jobs. So our conversation here will focus specifically on the pressures AI has put on our work and how we can resist it. I'm Sean Fern, he, they pronouns, a software engineer and member of OPEIU, the Office and Professional Employees International Union. I'll be facilitating today's panel. To my left is Vanessa Ko, they, them, from the National Union of Healthcare Workers. John Hasegawa, he, him, from the Mount Hood Faculty Association. Kinsley Searles, she, her, from the News Guild of New York. And Maggie Ann Gall, they, she, from IATSE Special Effects. So we'll start with the pressure of AI on our work. AI has a lot of definitions. What I think of it in terms of our work is this corporate controlled automation that promises massive increases in productivity built on a permanent underclass. But I'd like to hear from Vanessa, we'll start with you, on how AI has affected your work, how do you actually use it, and how is it, maybe being introduced or used by management?
For sure. Good afternoon, everyone. Nice to see all of you. I have the great honor and privilege of serving as the Secretary-Treasurer of NUHW. We represent 20,000 healthcare workers, a lot of behavioral health workers, and I'm going to talk to you today primarily about what Kaiser Permanente is trying to do in regard to AI. We represent 5,000 behavioral healthcare workers in Kaiser, in California, across California and Hawaii. So far, Kaiser has launched 2 AI initiatives that our mental health professionals in California are very concerned about, starting with a company called Abridge, whose AI technology records therapy sessions and generates notes intended to save clinicians time when charting after appointments. Our members are concerned, right? Because recording therapy appointments during which people share some of their most intimate thoughts, their traumatic experiences, it's inherently dangerous and risks undermining the trust between therapists and patients that is so critical to successful treatment. And it's not only that, but Kaiser and Abridge have refused to disclose much information about what these recordings could potentially be used for and how they'll be protected. We don't know where those recordings are going. What are they doing with them? How are they processing them? You know, and every time we ask, they're like, don't worry about it. Well, we're gonna worry about it. And look, our concerns are not unfounded. There was recently news coverage about a woman, Jennifer Camras, whose employer obtained a transcript of every word she had typed to her psychologist using the app Talkspace as part of a wrongful termination lawsuit, right? So, I mean, rightfully so, we're concerned. Right now, Kaiser's not mandating clinicians to use Abridge. We have some folks who are using it. We have some folks who say, you know, it's helpful in producing notes, but ultimately it doesn't really save time because clinicians are paying attention to not just what you say, but what you don't say, right? Your body language, your affect, right? There's a big difference between, how are you doing? I'm okay, and how are you doing? I'm okay, right? And Abridge has no idea. What you see in the notes is patient, okay, right? But there could be something really concerning that's going on. So, you know, I think that's one piece of it. You know, Kaiser is claiming that they really want to help clinicians and staff save time, but really what they want is to stuff, you know, more patient care in terms of like case management, right? They want to put a lot more clients in front of people at a faster rate, and they're like, well, if we help you take notes, it's better, right? But that's not even the most concerning AI technology that Kaiser is trying to employ in behavioral health right now. You know, currently Kaiser's other foray is about how patients are screened or triaged when seeking services for the first time. Traditionally, the screening is done by licensed therapists trained to ask a series of questions and follow-up questions, and they use their clinical judgment to determine if the person they're talking to might need an immediate intervention because they are a threat to themselves, or they need an urgent appointment within 48 hours, or they can wait up to 2 weeks for an intake appointment, which is what is required by state law in California. And Kaiser has mostly replaced this work with artificial intelligence. So now, many Kaiser members seeking mental health treatment, they do phone screenings with a telephone operator, not a licensed clinician, who reads a script of questions. And then these answers are fed into an AI algorithm. And from there, your treatment is determined from that questionnaire and that AI algorithm. So what we're seeing, right, and if you don't get into that sort of operator AI algorithm, you get an online questionnaire called eVisits, in which these answer questions are based on standard assessments for anxiety and depression, and then the AI algorithm immediately spits out a treatment recommendation without even a person talking to you. You're just filling out a questionnaire, and now they're deciding what's going on. And again, no licensed clinician in any part of this, which is required by the state. So not only does this, practice violate clinical standards, it violates California law, but triage assessments require a physician, a registered nurse, or other qualified health professional acting within their scope of practice, right, which is not happening. We've filed active complaints to state regulators over Kaiser's use of AI for triaging patients. In the last 3 months, our clinicians have filed nearly 1,000 complaints about dangerous patient care concerns regarding behavioral health care for Kaiser patients because of this. I think the major problem here is our folks are seeing people so through this triage system, you're getting your care, right? And what's happening is that people are being sent to the wrong place. People who need urgent care, who are at risk of hurting themselves, are not getting an appointment until 2 weeks or even farther out. We have, one of our therapists, Ilana Marcucci Morris, she says often when she meets with somebody now, when they come in through the Kaiser doors, thank God you're alive. I cannot believe you made it through the last 2 weeks. Thank God you're alive. Right? This is someone that should have been seen immediately, and the AI algorithm failed them. And this is not uncommon, right? This is like gumming up the system. It's supposed to be efficient. But on the other end, we have folks who are part of our crisis team who are intended to see these higher severity cases, and they're getting people who don't need them. These are folks who are like, yeah, I was feeling kind of bad that day, and, I just wanted to talk to somebody. And now that's gumming up the system and slowing it down. So the whole point, right? Kaiser's like, we have this AI to be more efficient and provide quality care, and it's making things infinitely worse, and people are in danger because of it. The last thing I just want to note is Kaiser has $67 billion in reserve. $67 billion. Since they started this algorithm, they've accumulated another $25 billion. They could provide the best behavioral health care in this country if they wanted to. Just let that sit. Like, they could pick a therapist for every single one of us who saw you weekly, right? And the really frustrating thing is that when you call to see a therapist, you're probably having one of the worst days of your life. And instead of being met with a human being who seeks to understand you, you're being met with an algorithm that's going to put you into the wrong place when you're already having probably the worst time of your life. Yeah. And we deserve better.
Thank you, Vanessa. Thank you. Let's turn to John. Maybe you could say a little bit about how you're seeing the effect on the faculty at Mount Hood.
So John Hasegawa, I work at Mount Hood Community College. I teach ceramics classes there, and I want to point out, this session is being live streamed over YouTube, right? We know that. Where is this recording going, right? I'm not speaking that we shouldn't be live streaming this for our members, but these are questions we are asking ourselves at Mount Hood. There are faculty and members, right, putting content online, either on YouTube and things like that, and we're always worried about intellectual property. I have come to terms that what we say here today, personally, on this panel, may be entered and probably will be entered into an AI system somewhere, right, as a panelist. That makes sense to everybody? So we are asking some difficult questions in education, right? What is the value of my intellectual property? We have a ton of students taking online classes in college. There are tons of college students. K-12 did that experiment, right, during COVID, and pretty much all of K-12 went back to in-person teaching. But college, there is a ton of people just getting degrees or taking a massive amount of content online. The issue is, partially, is what we would call plagiarism, right, is that we do, for some of these students, we don't meet for some of these classes in person. They are using AI to generate a ton of their work and turning stuff in. It is really fracturing the trust relationship that faculty have between students and faculty. It is really causing us a rough time because as AI gets better, it gets harder to spot. As AI gets better, it's being used for more diverse things as well. Right? So it's not just papers, it's math, it's science homework. It is pretty amazing what students will attempt to use AI for, and it's getting smarter. And because of the mistrust, the faculty are always suspicious of everything that's getting turned in. And they're turning into these AI checkers, like personal AI checkers. It's pretty shocking, the stories I hear. Part of it is, I think we're running into an ethical/moral dilemma. What should AI be used for, right? Our students already know that plagiarism is a bad thing. We've culturally taught them that, right? But the content they're turning in may have not really ever existed in that exact format before. They see it as a task getting done. They accomplish the task. When they turn in the homework, good, they move on to the next thing, right? They are missing the point of why we're actually assigning that work. So I think higher education and educators need to come to terms with what we're really trying to do, right? And that students need to come to terms with that too. And partially, and I'll hit on this multiple times, like what are the ethical boundaries of using AI? We've established that for other things, right? Like cheating, we know cheating is bad, right? We know other things are really bad, but we haven't really developed the standards for what we would consider ethical behavior when generating AI. An example, there was an administrator at my college that took our faculty's images and created a false picture of all of us together from their area and then showed it during a slide presentation to their faculty, at a staff meeting, right? We were quite shocked by that, right? Generating a new image with us all together doing something, forget about it, right? So those boundaries are being crossed and people aren't really thinking about what's happening. The other issue we are fighting is what we would call our faculty intellectual property, right? So we'll just cite a case. So Arizona State University has been what they call scraping class content, because we already talked about how there's tons of classes online. I have all my content online as well, even though I'm teaching all in-person classes, right? Students have an expectation when they enroll in classes that there'll be, even if they're not an online class, that there'll be content there for them to access. Handouts, all my instructional materials are there. I have tons of videos there. Arizona State University scraped those classes and was generating new classes without faculty consent. They were generating new imagery that's based upon the faculty, like images of the faculty. It was pretty scary, and then repackaging those things as new classes, right? They were really what we would call like flattening out, like very complicated subjects and really flattening them and simplifying them to the point where the information was just clearly wrong, and then selling that information back to students as new content without going back to content experts, right? Checking. We had something similar, a parallel case at my campus where our area of online learning was generating new classes without our input, and then marketing and sending those classes out for faculty to teach. The faculty that were teaching those classes, these were new faculty, were not allowed to change those classes at all, right? And those classes that they were being told to teach were part of a bigger curriculum. They didn't fit with the overall curriculum. I do think that as members, as local members, we need to, that kind of shows us what they think the value of content experts are, right, in the field. And I think whatever your job is, you're a content expert in that thing. Your administrator kind of maybe doesn't care about your knowledge in your field, right? They are looking at something else, right? Not at what is sometimes best for our students, best for the educational institution. They're just thinking about a way to streamline the process, right? We are also, the last thing we're kind of worried about is how HR is using our personal data, right? So if they're going to write a disciplinary letter about John Hasegawa, me, are they going to enter that into an AI system and say, John Hasegawa hit a student, write a disciplinary letter about that? Where is that information going? So later on, when you Google John Hasegawa, is it going to say that I'm hitting students, right? Are they using AI to make hiring decisions, right? Are they sorting applicants, right? It's pretty scary, some of the stuff. One of the things we are requesting is that HR have some sort of security system in place where, and this is what they're using in the tech world, because they don't want secrets getting out, as they call it a walled garden, where they keep the information segregated from the overall big open AI systems. So.
Thank you, John. Yeah, I think you bring up a really good point. Yeah, let's give John a round of applause. Thank you for that. I think John raises that, as in the title of the talk, a lot of this is about the quality of our work. We are the experts in the work that we do, and a lot of this resistance is about trying to keep that quality up instead of letting it slide. So I'll let Kinsley talk to that around what it's like to be in the news business in the age of AI.
Hi, everyone. How's it going? Oh, yeah. Woo! I'm going to keep an eye on the time because anyone who knows me will know that if you let me talk about AI, I will talk forever. But yeah, my name's Kinsley. Up until last month, I was an associate editor at Business Insider, and about a month ago to the day, I was laid off. Thank you. Yeah, hiss, boo, tomato, tomato. And when I found this out, I emailed Sean, and I was like, Sean, bad news. I had already agreed to do this panel. Bad news, I got laid off. And he was like, well, actually, you might be even more relevant to this panel now. So I'm glad I can kind of bring that experience here. So yeah, I worked for Business Insider. If you're not familiar, Business Insider is owned by a German company called Axel Springer. Axel Springer also owns Politico, Morning Brew, recently acquired The Telegraph for billions of dollars, but couldn't pay my base salary, whatever. I'm not salty about it at all. But Axel Springer is really, really AI-pilled, is I think how I would describe it. Especially at Business Insider, there's a push for the newsroom to use AI in all different ways and in ways that aren't necessarily useful. So I actually gathered some quotes with the help of my BFF Jane down here. She helped me pull some quotes from Matthias Döpfner, who is the CEO of Axel Springer, a billionaire, of course. Some things that he said point blank, I think these are all from one meeting, truthfully, about AI, to kind of like set the scene before I get into it. But my first one. Nobody in the company has to explain why he or she uses AI. You just have to explain if you didn't use it. When asked if AI is going to replace jobs, he said, does it replace jobs here and there? The honest answer is yes, no doubt about it. And my final favorite one is you either embrace AI or you die. So I think when I first heard him say these things, I was kind of aghast, but anyone who works under an Axel Springer company, anyone who works at BI, will understand that you get so used to hearing this, like, embrace AI or die, that it kind of just rolls off your back at some point. In my own team, so I was a journalist, but I'm not your typical journalist. I'm a service journalist, so that means that I worked under the reviews team at Business Insider. So I was doing product reviews, buying guides, deal day coverage, gift guides. And I covered home and kitchen specifically. So my niche is bedding. If you need a good pillow, you can hit me up. I got all the recommendations. And if you're familiar with the service journalism industry, you probably know that it's kind of flailing right now. Last night, as like a preparation for this, I went and I Googled best pillow, which is, something that, the way service journalism works basically is you are trying to optimize your articles to land at the top of the search page on Google. And it used to be when you Googled something like best pillow, it would pop up with like Wirecutter or Forbes Vetted, examples of like things that have been tested by service journalists, written by service journalists. Now when you do that, it comes up with an AI overview that tells you what the best pillow is. That also, by the way, is pulling from the stories. It's kind of freaky, actually, to Google best pillow and then see a picture from my own bedroom pop up in the AI overview. The first time that happened, it was really freaky. So this has really caused a sort of backpedaling in service industry, and it's really been a struggle. And we've seen that reflected at Business Insider. So at BI, we've had layoffs every year for the past 4 years. I started as a fellow last February. Last May, they did a huge round of layoffs where 50% of my direct team was laid off, so 50% of the commerce or service team, and 20% of the entire newsroom was laid off. So it saw me losing a lot of my direct colleagues, and eventually it also claimed me. So in review specifically, we're kind of seeing this angle where it's like, we have to do whatever we can to survive. And because Axel Springer and BI was so heavy in pushing AI, the way that looked is like relying on AI tools a lot. So at first, this might sound familiar to y'all, but when at first it was like, okay, how can we use AI? It was encouraged use. And in a lot of ways to replace the labor that was done by laid off coworkers. I think there was a manager who literally said at Business Insider, like, oh, any question that you would have asked this layoff member, you can just ask ChatGPT instead. So we're seeing like AI being used to try to replace that labor because, they want production, but they don't want to pay the workers to do that. So at first it was encouraged, and editors were always involved in the decisions, but then eventually it started becoming more mandatory. So on my team specifically, we had an executive make a custom GPT to generate headlines for our articles. So he used this GPT to go into our Muse, our CMS documents, change the headlines, publishing it without telling us. So one of the examples was I was working on an article about the best smoke detectors, which I had worked really carefully with that freelancer to make sure we weren't making any broad safety claims, making any claims that could make us legally liable. And then once I discovered the new headline, it said, "The best smoke detectors that give you the most time to escape a fire." This is very validating for me, y'all. Thank you for your reactions. And that's just one example. There was full of grammatical errors, full of huge issues. I found one that had been up on the site for weeks where he had accidentally copied the prompt in from ChatGPT. So it said, "Best option, best hair dryers 2026. So that was pretty awesome. But yeah, and that was just based on my team specifically, but we were also seeing, there's an AI news bot that was rolled out that essentially was generating stories based on press releases or tweets, and those were overseen by non-unit members and edited by non-union members. And we also saw first person. BI has a lot of first person essays, which again Jane here has worked really extensively on, and they would aggregate those stories. So pull 5 or 6 articles about tiny homes and aggregate it into one story, and we found that those were just completely riddled with errors. So I think from our perspective, when we're looking at this, something that's really resonated with me as I'm reflecting on all these experiences is just how AI is used as a tool to continue to show disrespect for workers and what we do. Because why does an executive who has no journalism experience, no experience in service, who all he has to do is name is a huge ego, who is he to think that he knows how to write headlines better than editors? Who are they to say that they know how to aggregate these stories and edit them better than editors? Why aren't the editors a style editor who's been working in the industry for a decade, who's this is not hyperbole, walked hundreds of miles in different pairs of shoes to find the most comfortable heels? Why isn't she the one who's writing these headlines? She's the one with the experience. And so I think this continued disrespect is just another way for managers to devalue our work, devalue our labor. It's in media, but it's also everywhere. So that's kind of my main takeaway.
Thank you, Kinsley. Yeah, I really like that example of it highlights this just extra kick in the gut of an already confident management becoming even more confident, having even greater overconfidence as they're being fed into this kind of AI psychosis. All right, I'll pass it on to Maggie to tell us a little bit about special effects.
Oh, goodness. Hi, everyone. Again, I'm Maggie Ann Gall, they, she. I am a member of IATSE, that is the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees. Thank you. We are the crew who not only put on your theatrical productions, but we make your motion pictures, we put on your live events. We're everywhere in your entertainment industry. We are one small union among a massive family of unions and guilds affected by artificial intelligence. Okay, show of hands, who here does not use social media at all? Liars. No, good for you, good for you. For everyone else, you can get a very, very small taste of what it feels like to be working in our industry when you get fooled by one of the synthetic, they're not even bots anymore, they are synthetic profiles meant to confuse people and scam them on your Instagram and TikTok, everything like that. That's just a little taste. I'm going to take us back right now to 2023, summer of strikes. WGA, which is the Writers Guild, and SAG-AFTRA both went on strike that summer. They went on strike for very good reason. One of those reasons for both of them was to create the very first guardrails for AI in our industry. If you were at the 2024 conference, Adam Conover very famously came and spoke and did one of these giant panels about this very situation. It is a demoralizing time to be in this industry. We are constantly being replaced, whether it's just more efficient technologies or just producers who don't know what they're doing. So, employers who think that they know better and that they can cut costs by getting rid of human labor. In 2024, IATSE followed up the writers and performers with our motion picture negotiations, and we established our first guardrails for AI. What we achieved was to define some terminology and to suggest that the unions should meet with the employers semi-annually just to discuss how this technology is evolving. That's no protection. I'm sorry. That's not protection. IATSE will be negotiating our next contract this coming spring in 2027. We are going to be building, hopefully, off of SAG and WGA's recently ratified contracts, which unfortunately did not achieve any additional protections, and in fact opened the door to more abuses and exploitation by allowing the producers now to include synthetic performers. Sorry, I'm hoarse and crying. Sorry. While members of my union, IATSE, are definitely affected by artificial intelligence, and I will call out some key ones: graphic artists, our illustrators, our designers, concept artists, storyboard artists, and many, many in our post-production houses. We, like everyone here, have employers that think they can suddenly cut out people who spent decades refining their craft because they now have access to what some call a democratized, creation, basically access to become an artist without, knowing how to create art on your own. They're basically getting rid of these roles wholesale. So moving on from my union, I truly feel that the most affected in this are the performers. Whenever we introduce AI, the very first thing is, or additional technologies, the very first thing that companies want to do is save money by getting rid of human labor. And the most human labor are the people in front of the camera in our industry. They are seeing this as a way to save money on bodies, create someone who will do their ultimate bidding and look however they want. And like with all these other industries as well, it's based on stolen information, stolen likenesses, and soulless replications or attempts to replicate a human experience. Digital replicas, even of a person who's scanned in, is not that person. They can never achieve the performance of the real human. The Human Performers Union, SAG-AFTRA, did include new language in their recently ratified contract that is supposed to discourage use of synthetic performances and digital replicas and require the companies to have an extreme excuse for needing to use them, as well as notifying the persons involved. But there's lacking enforcement language, and again, open the door by defining a synthetic performer. Beyond just the exploitation of labor, another thing that is very scary right now is the huge prevalence of deep fakes and voice cloning scams. It's not just a loss of money for us, but it is also fraud. It's destroying families. And all of these things are used, they're created and used by the same companies making your entertainment, and then people are using them to scam others. So it's very disappointing. Many of the companies a few years ago decided to invest in their own, I would say, like databases, AI systems, replica systems, digital libraries, and thought that they could start creating and regurgitating their own content. And then they realized that they have some issues with IP because currently they will not own it if it's a generated product. So luckily we have some rollback on that, but that was a very scary thing for us. I think ultimately the most disappointing thing in my industry right now regarding artificial intelligence is that we're suddenly seeing the kind of the lack of solidarity of people who exist solely within our industry who are now promoting use of these products. And promoting use of these products and saying that you can get rid of labor by using them. Most notably, Netflix acquired Interpositive, which is a company that Ben Affleck owns. And then Martin Scorsese just a week ago came out and saying he was in support of using AI, especially just to help your initial thought process when you're creating movies. A lot of notable people have decided that they would like to wholesale adopt AI technologies as a part of their creation processes. And to each their own, but when you're suddenly replacing human labor, that becomes a problem. When you're suddenly not creating but regurgitating, this is a problem. And unfortunately, many of those people are the people who own the production companies that we work for and tell us that they no longer need us. To wrap it all up, I work in special effects. I work in practical special effects. I have been told since I entered this industry that my job is extinct, basically, at this point. Well, I'm not. I still work. People still love blowing stuff up for real. It's great. I highly recommend, if you're going to get into it, definitely get the license to explode things. I'm not scared. CGI in the 90s, when computers became, a common household product, it didn't replace real people. People still love true human experiences, real environments, and we're definitely seeing a swing back into that, but we also know that any new technology is going to be very, very rapidly adopted and used, and we're going to see a lot of slop. We're going to see a lot of messy crap before they realize that, oh, maybe this is not the best. So right now we're kind of in the middle of that spree of, ooh, this is fun and exciting and everyone can do it now. And but we're looking forward to when it swings back to a more sane and safe working environment. Do use it for supporting your process and organization and like that. But I do ask that if you're claiming to create something but you're using one of the generators, please acknowledge the fact that that's built not on the shoulders, of giants. It's built on the mountains of existence right now of every single piece of information that's ever been digitized. All right, and I'm going to finish there. Thanks, guys.
We can leave it over by Maggie. I think it's part of that. You can leave it over. Thank you, Maggie. Thank you for that focus on the human. I want to take a moment here to let the audience talk to each other for just 90 seconds. I want you to find a partner, and you'll each have 90 seconds to tell each other how AI might affect you in your work. I'm going to start the timer now. Talk to each other.
Y'all are so smart.
Yeah.
They have so many good things.
Yeah.
This is good.
The best
I thought they were
is
gonna
practical effects,
They don't.
right? The best everything, right? Because they work,
Some are good.
right? They have to think really hard, right?
How are we doing on time?
a little bit long, but I have some time. We still have another hour.
I'm gonna use a lot less time here too. Yeah.
I wanted to start with Maggie because so I'll probably just come back to it. Yeah.
I remember when the big strike was happening. He was definitely like a leading voice and like the public state too. Because like a late person. I was like, okay, I kind of get it.
It's so important. I love movies.
Okay, everyone, that's time to switch. Now is the time to switch. If one person has been doing most of the talking, switch to the other person.
Yeah. It's fine.
I'll do another clap.
This is my birthday.
Hopefully he'll bring up something in the Q&A.
When people don't get the opportunity to talk to one another, they use the Q&A to share. So ask questions. It's such like a good idea.
All right, if you can hear me, clap once. If you can hear me, clap twice. 3 times. Thank you so much for being so ready to talk about it. We're going to go back to the panel for just a little bit more to focus this time more on the resistance side. What we're doing to push back on the AI pressure that we've been talking about. I'm going to say a little something here that I think we've dealt with new technology. It's kind of the history of the labor movement in many ways, including the Luddites who took action against the machines. Yes, took action against the machines that were replacing them to protest the devaluation of labor in their time. AI is no different in seeking to increase that level of automation. But I think the backlash is so strong because it pushes the edge of cognition, taking away not only tedious tasks, but our very ability to reason and make decisions. So I'm going to start this section with the big open-ended question of how are you and your fellow coworkers resisting AI pressure? And we'll continue with Maggie.
I'll be briefer this time, guys. Within IATSE, most notably, the Art Directors Guild, which is Local 800, they are a national. And I would say the Animators, which is 839, also a national. They also have counterparts in Canada as well. They, in 2024, really led the contract issues related to artificial intelligence for IATSE's negotiations. Unfortunately, their needs were not met. Their demands were heard, but nothing issued. Again, our contract negotiations are coming up again in 2027, and we're going to basically continue to push this forward. Same needs. We really need hard language to have, so that human role can't be replaced by a machine. We always know we're going to lose, labor, but we should not lose the role entirely. So that's going to be very important to us moving forward. As far as the performers go, supposedly they cannot give consent to be replicated, to be scanned, basically, to make a digital replica. However, as we all know, pressure from your employers, especially a multi-billion-dollar corporation, is very, very hard to resist, and most of those people end up being scanned. And the ones who don't work. You still can withhold your consent, they just won't hire you again. People are still practicing this. Mostly what we're looking at in our industry is trying to establish some cross-union solidarity to support each other. It is very hard to establish. It's hard to even do it within our individual unions, but we are working towards that. Every contract cycle, we all as many of us as we can get together, stand together to support the needs to further protections in our contracts. The government's not going to do it. The U.S. government is all over the place right now. The state governments, doing it state by state is also very difficult. It takes a lot of time. It's years and years and years. We know our contract cycles are 3 or 4 years. That's an easy target for us to hit. So we're really taking it back to the contracts that we have to control these things, that we get to define them, that we get to regulate them, and that has got to be our focus. We have to put it in our contracts, what protections we want and how we want to deal with these things in order to enforce them and to penalize the employers when they are exploiting us or when they violate a contract. That's really it. Stick it in a contract. On the job, again, this is all boots on the ground. All of our organizing is in the real world together. When we see something happening or when we see a role being replaced or someone not getting hired, we have to speak up. And that is the easiest, fastest way to deal with it, is to turn it in immediately. So that's our tactic right now, is just self-enforcement. We are learning a lot from other countries. I would like Korea has much better actual national legal protections about anyone who gets deep faked, people who are basically the victims of that. They're a lot faster at responding to that. We have none of that legislation in America, unfortunately. It's very hit or miss, and the majority of us would have absolutely no legal means of following up on that, so you'd have to be very rich for anyone to actually care. But yeah, we're trying to learn lessons from around the world, see what protections there are, see what's working, and go on from there. But yeah, put it in a contract and help each other on the shop floor.
Thank you, Maggie. I think there's an important point there, that we have some protections already in our contracts around layoffs, around replacing workers that apply to AI, but then there's more that we can do, specifically pointing out AI in contracts going forward. Hand it off to Kinsley.
Yeah. So I've when I'm thinking about resistance and what we've done, I've kind of narrowed it down into to 3 bullet points. The first thing I would say is to keep your eyes open. So I mentioned this mandatory GPT that the reviews team had to use for headlines. AI use started as, wouldn't it be nice if you had ChatGPT rewrite this copy, or have you put this headline into ChatGPT, kind of encouraged, and it very quickly turned into something which is you have to do every headline through this GPT before you publish it. So I advise everyone to keep your eyes open. One way that we did this is we have a subcommittee in our union that's the AI subcommittee. It's run by 2 wonderfully brilliant co-chairs, and I got to participate in that, and it was a really awesome environment. just to keep an eye on what the company is doing with AI, ensuring it's not breaching our CBA, of course, but also just trying to mitigate this kind of creep where we continue to see AI being used in like sneakier and sneakier ways. So I think definitely keep your eyes open, keep track of that. The AI committee was like an excellent place for us to keep track of that, organize actions around AI, and it was a great community. Also just to vent about AI, which I feel like if you're in this panel, you might need to vent about AI sometimes, which is so valid. So that's something we did. And then the second part of keeping your eyes open is seeing through management's tactics around AI. So I don't know about y'all, but you know, for management, for us, a lot of what we're hearing is like, oh, we're making these tools to help you. This AI is a tool to help you. And I heard Gaylord, who is a guild friend, a guild sibling, describe that as a Trojan horse earlier today. And I think that's such a good example. Where, I don't know about y'all, but I'm not going to take management's word if they say that they're trying to make my job easier. That definitely raises some red flags for me. And something that I also saw, you know, I've seen like discourse around AI is like, okay, but if we integrate AI into our workflows, like that'll make us do less work. And I'm here to say that has not happened whatsoever. Yeah, you have to do more work, exactly. And we know even if like an AI tool is super helpful and it like helps your workflow, they're not gonna like be like, okay, that's all I need from you. They're gonna be like, okay, do more. Because what they care about is dollars in their pocket, and the way they get that is through more production from workers. So I think just keeping your eyes open about, you know, what are they saying, how are they saying it, making sure that you're thinking through it, you know. My second subpoint is to speak up and act. So I think it's really just key to, you know, use your union power, use that solidarity whenever you can. So on my small team, for example, we had like a reviews team meeting, and when the VP who made the custom GPT for headlines was talking about the GPT, me and two other union members, we agreed that we were going to speak up about it at the meeting. So we like point blank said that we don't think it should be mandatory. And I'm not kidding you when I say this made the VP so mad he got hives. It was really awesome. It's like one of the highlights of my career, I feel. So even like speaking up in those smaller meetings is really important because, you know, it had turned into something that's like, okay, this is integrated into your workflow and you're just going to do it. And so I think they expected us to forget about that. And so I think it's important to show you're not forgetting about being forced to use these tools. And then, of course, actions are great. I want to talk a little bit about my favorite action that I participated in when I was at BI. To prep for our first day of bargaining for our successor contract, we were leading with job security, including AI protections. And so we had a Slack channel that was like a props channel, essentially. So it's like you could go shout out coworkers who like had done really great journalism. Mostly it was used by managers to be like, oh, I read this article and I thought it was really great, like props to you. And we planned a takeover of this channel where we gave props to human-made work in our newsroom. And that was just such an amazing action because, you know, we were showing that we really value human work. We're committed to job security, we're committed to the contract, and we were celebrating coworkers, showing that like you won't be us without us. Where like Business Insider has one remaining union member copywriter, shout out Mark. And so he got a lot of love in saying like how important it is to have a human copy editor. Like what is that like? Or for example, like boots on the ground reporting. Like I could not see a robot, you know, like going to Mom Donnie events and reporting on what that was like. I can't see that happening. And so shouting out that human-made work and reminding management that like we make you. You wouldn't be us without you. And you can try to replace our work with AI, but it's not going to work. The business is going to fail. And then my third one is obviously contract language is super important, which I think Maggie spoke a little bit to as well. So in our current contract, we don't have specific AI protections like spelled out. But we have been able to agree upon some AI stuff related to some language we have around not using, like not giving unit work to non-unit members. It was mainly made for like freelance, so it's like you can't fire a porter and then just freelance everything out. But we've been able to kind of like finesse that into AI because they're outsourcing that work to AI. So that's an example of like how we've used it now. And now we're bargaining our successor contract, and the first thing on the table is job security, including AI protections. So one struggle that we've come into is like obviously AI is a hot button topic. Everyone has different opinions on it. And so it's been kind of interesting to get members involved and interested in us putting AI down first at the bargaining table. But it's obviously really important. I think it's going to be standard for most contracts moving forward to have AI protections, especially as we can see like continued layoff, continued job replacement using AI. So those are my 3 things for you. Keep your eyes open, speak up and act, and then make sure that you have good contract language so you have a base to go off of.
Thank you, Kinsley. I'd like to bring up, you made that point about AI just being more work. And I do see, especially as a software engineer, the amount of AI burnout or AI exhaustion is really reaching critical levels. Last month, my company announced that we were going AI native. And now we're going through an AI transformation and AI enablement to inject it into all of our workflows. So, just trying to get through that is exhausting. All right, John, how have you been addressing AI?
So for us at the college level, we are most worried about it penetrating into our classrooms, like where the college will tell us what we have to use it for when we're working with our students. For us, luckily, there is this very strong tradition of academic freedom, at least here in the United States. I don't know about other countries. And for those of you that don't know what that means, as a content expert in my classroom, I have the right to teach my class the way how I feel like it should be. We have passed that language. We've actually stated that, and the college does not seem to be contesting that language. They didn't want to touch that. So my academic freedom at the college level is preserved. We have clearly stated that in the contract that I think they've TA'd that language. And so what that means is basically it says, it's my choice whether AI gets used in the classroom or not, as a person, as the teacher running that classroom. And that would be something that I think my folks would be willing to strike over. And like every panelist has said so far, dude, get it in your contract. There is lots of reasons why. We are because you start this contract process, right? You have to reach out to members, figure out what their values are, use that system to figure out what your members' concerns are, beliefs, their values around AI, so that you can push that agenda in the bargaining room. For us, it doesn't feel like there's so much pushback coming to us from the college about that. But we have laid out those concerns. We have listened to our members. We got those concerns. We're laying them out to the college, and we're having open discussion about what is happening. These are our concerns. They're now aware of what's going on, right? I am almost positive they have not thought about this on that level, right? Their concerns are somewhere else, how to streamline, how to save money, how to do this, how to do that. They're not thinking about the classroom, what my students need to know. They know nothing about my ceramic students. They don't know really anything about English students, right? What they need, how would AI mess it up? They have clearly shown through trying to generate these classes on their own, right, without the content experts, that in some ways they are looking at the wrong goals, right? All right, so in our contract thing, so we're making them aware. We poll our members. We know what they want. We bring them to the table. At least we're in discussion with them. They're proposing different things back. There was an AI committee that started a couple of years ago. Remember when ChatGPT started? And I was like, we started an AI committee, a college-wide group. it disappeared about a year and a half ago. That group stopped meeting. And then since we're bringing it up again, right, at the bargaining table, all of a sudden that committee now is starting up again, right? Because we are raising concerns in our contract proposal. We are saying we want an AI committee. Dude, I don't know if any of you guys work at a college. We love our committees, baby, right? We just committee that baby up. And we want, right, we have the same questions as you. What are the best practices around this, right? How do we keep from people being harmed, right, from this technology? What are the good things and the bad things, or whatever it is, right? It's all questions. And I do understand we need to be nimble and responsive and to the dangers, right? Because it seems like there's a new thing like every few weeks, like, oh my God. So that's what part of what we want. There was this interesting proposal in Washington State, because I'm in Oregon, we follow what Washington's doing. In the legislature this year, there was a bill, it never got out of committee, about making AI a mandatory subject of bargaining. Dude, why aren't we pushing for that, right? So look that up. Let's see if we can get that on the table, right? And I think it was mainly for public workers, right? But let's see if that's something we can try to do, right? And once again, man, what are the ethical concerns, right? We've talked a lot about it, but there are other people this is affecting as well. Like we have a student population. I'm faculty. We're very worried about our classified workers, right? Our support workers on our campus, because I think they're feeling really insecure about student advising. Can they automate student advising almost completely at our college? Like it feels like they're already automating so much other stuff, right? And so we're the only ones in contract bargaining, but it feels like we're also fighting for our other employee groups on campus. Thank you.
Thank you, John. All right. I'll just pass it off to you, Vanessa.
Cool. So, I think folks have mentioned contractual language. Last year, our Kaiser therapists in Southern California went on an open-ended strike. They were on strike for 6 months, if you can imagine. And they won. They won a number of things. And one of the things that they won was language that says Kaiser's use of new technologies, including AI, is not to replace, but to assist bargaining unit employees in providing safe, therapeutic, and effective patient care and support. So we have language that says not a single therapist can be replaced by AI in Southern California. But the problem is we're now bargaining in Northern California, and they've rejected that proposal every single time now. Right? And so when we've asked them, like, why did you agree to that in Southern California, but not in Northern California? They've said, we want flexibility. For what? Like, what we say is that it always comes down to worker power. What are we doing to stop them? In Northern California, 2,400 of our mental health clinicians went on strike over this specific language to win AI protections. And not only that, did they go on strike, the nurses in Northern California all went on strike with them as well. It took a sympathy strike. And the reason they did that is because Kaiser spent $40 million investing in AI technology meant to replace RNs. Right? Just spending money left and right on AI, which I call nothing burger, because AI, frankly, doesn't add any value right now that I can count or consider. I think it really helps people to write things. There's some, sure. But in terms of real patient care, there's no added value at all. As well, what our folks did is they went on a march. They went through the city of Oakland. We took it to the streets. We landed at headquarters, held a massive rally there. What our folks did last year around this 6-month strike, we know that even though our folks in Northern California, they went on a 10-week strike, they're prepared to get into the streets. We know that same tactic will not work again. Right? Because what Kaiser wants is they want our therapists to not work. They want to welcome the AI technology. They want to contract out their work. And if we went on another open-ended strike, we would open the door for them to do that. And they would love it. And so this really creates a demand for us to be creative about how we take it to them. You know, like, it's not just, you know, the sort of trajectory of like, picket, strike, longer strike, strike forever, right? Like, we've really had to do a number of things, from like leafletting them, filing complaints with the regulatory bodies, you know, having brunch with board members on their lawns, you know, all kinds of things, right? And it requires a level of creativity, but we know that the power is always with our members. It's always with, you know, thinking through how we build power, how we flex our power. But the other thing that we are doing as well is we are moving legislation in the state that makes it illegal to have AI participate in things that require clinical judgment for therapy. And you're going to see laws like that across this country. Some states already have them. Of course, we're being, you know, who's lobbying against that? I'll let you guess, right? It's the very people who claim to be prioritizing patient care. So, you know, we're doing that. But again, right, like, we can't rely on the law. We cannot rely on governments. We cannot rely on bodies like that. We have to take care of each other. We have to take care of each other, right, and ourselves. And part of that is why we continue to go back to like worker power and what we do. You know, I do think that is very particular that there is this emphasis to have AI as part of the therapeutic model. You all see it everywhere with the apps. You see folks using ChatGPT. You see people really like not wanting to be with a person and try to feel better. And I think part of that is the more disconnected we are, the less we crave sort of having an authentic human experience. And I think that ties into everything that we've been talking here, is like, when we are not well, like, I think that really benefits sort of this AI trajectory that we're on right now. So, yeah. Like, I just think there's a lot for us to do, a lot for us to defend, and it's really going to take all of us to do that, and we can.
All right. I want to open up for Q&A, but first I did want to highlight one thing that Vanessa touched on there, that with that $40 million is, you know, just a drop in the bucket of what is being spent on AI these days. All of these companies, they're gambling big on this technology, and I think there is some kind of leverage that we have there where we can present the kind of rational argument against these insane bets that they're taking. Yeah, just a thought there. So with the Q&A, I'll come around, we'll do a round of kind of just like going to everyone, get some questions in, and then we'll have the panel answer. If we have time, we'll do a second round. I'll come around with the mic.
Hi, I'm an organizer with a healthcare union. We work primarily with hospitals. We work with nurses. We work with service and tech staff. I was discussing with a coworker about the use of AI. Put it out there, I'm fully against. But my coworker was arguing about the use of being able to use it to input, track, report data from workers, to relieve overworked organizers, and to keep on top of data work that our managers keep, hounding us to get done faster and faster. Someone argue with, if we did not use it, the same technology that the hospital is using to fight against the unions, that we're shooting ourselves in the foot and will not be able to beat them, let alone keep up. What do you guys say to that, and about the integration, about data work, AI use in data work, especially in the healthcare field, especially in hospitals and clinics?
Great. Hello. Happy to be here with everyone today. I work in Seattle and working currently with advising staff. So your point about advising staff and AI, is very relevant to me right now. One thing that comes to mind that I think is we can bring these conversations up, and where it is currently at, it feels as though workers use it and it kind of feels okay outside of the workplace, right? It's like, oh yeah, I use ChatGPT. And so how do we have these conversations to let them know how dire this situation really is, right? I feel like we're already so far behind the ball with it, and where it will lead very quickly is, I feel, to a place where jobs will be lost, lots of jobs will be lost, and they will try to rehire AI, people to do AI work, right, at much lower wages. And I kind of see that as our trajectory unless we get in front of it. And so how do we actually have those conversations with the coworkers and workers in the workplace as organizers to let them know how dire it is?
Hi, everyone. My name is Amos. I'm the General Counsel of the Washington-Baltimore News Guild, and thank you for sharing your experiences with AI. I just want to add that we represent a lot of journalists dealing with new AI tools introduced in the newsroom, and we represent a unit at Politico. Politico created a report builder that generated basically articles and also created an AI feature that generates live summaries of events. And the unit secured language that requires management to bargain with the unit, and also language that requires any AI tool to comply with ethical standards and include human oversight. And they filed a grievance, and we won the arbitration, and the arbitrator ruled that these tools violate the contract, and eventually Politico decided to completely shut them down. So we can fight it, and sometimes we can win, and I'm happy to share the arbitration award that we received and share more about our experience there, because it can be useful.
How do you think about the tension that exists between the desire to strengthen intellectual property rights and the global and domestic injustices perpetuated through intellectual property rights in, for example, the pharmaceutical industry?
Hey everyone, Nick Ustrom, United Campus Workers of Arizona. We're the wall-to-wall labor union at Arizona State, where Atomic Mess was at. If you don't know, they have also forced all their students to pay $100 a semester advanced technology fee, which is generating about roughly $40 million a year for ASU. I just wanted to point out to John's comment about the question if they're using AI for hiring. We have heard that they are using AI tools for potential firing decisions. So again, we're a pre-majority right-to-work state. I think it's no coincidence it's happening here in Arizona where we don't have contracts, but just wanted to share that.
All right, I'll just do one more question here, and then we'll let them talk and try to do another round.
Hi, Elaine Bernal, they, them pronouns, California Faculty Association. I'm curious to what extent have folks organized with folks across education, like K-12, other post-secondary institutions, because we're basically that pipeline. I mean, I have the good fortune of growing up in the union family. My sister's CNA, brother-in-law's in UHW, but a lot of students don't know what their rights are, and companies are coming to recruit students and not really being aware with, hey, AI is coming for everybody. So I'm curious what those conversations have been like, if you've had them with other folks, like across industries, because again, we're basically, preparing those students, right? And that, the conversations need to move from the classroom to, the industry. Thank you.
Some of those questions were in your direction, John, so maybe you want to start?
Okay. So OEA, which is the Oregon Education Association, is primarily K-12, and we're about 7% community college. I am deeply worried about this because that is a great question. Like, what are we going to do about this? And that concern, right? We're seeing that concern in the way how our online classes are being implemented, right? We haven't really set up those expectations about how to use AI, and I feel like a lot of you, like a lot of you in your workplace, our students are suffering because of that, because we have taught them that, at least the way that feels like when it's coming to us, like assignments are task oriented, right? If they can get it done, they're done. And it doesn't matter if they use AI. And I think we have to go through some sort of cultural shift right here, where we establish those ethics about what needs to happen and when, right? I get it. Like, some of my faculty have chosen to adopt AI as part of their workflow in the classroom, right? They're telling their students, use it this way, and then we will look at other things, compare, contrast with other works that have been written and have like the established documented sources, and they compare the two, right? Like, this is what was AI generated, this is what the known authors and the experts have written, what's the difference, right? So they're trying to teach them the boundaries of it and what the limitations are. And I think those faculty have just accepted that AI is just part of the workflow. At my local, we do have faculty that have to teach AI as part of their curriculum because that's how they were hired. We have people teaching computer technology involved in that curriculum. They have to show that part. But I do think there's a deficit, and we are behind on showing our students what needs to happen. And I'm deeply concerned about that, because the longer we wait on this question, we are just going to keep falling further and further behind. I don't know how we even catch up to this.
Yes. First of all, I just want to say thank you for bringing up Politico. That was a really amazing win from our sister shop. So that was really good to see, and a great point to make about journalism too. But I wanted to talk a little bit about the question that was like discussing AI use and how dire the AI situation is in the union with people who might be using AI in their own lives. This is a problem that we've definitely run into, where everyone has their own uses for AI, and some people use it more than others, especially in journalism. Like, some people use it to generate ideas for pitches or to clean copy, whatever it might be. And so the way that we've approached it is less like, we're going to ban AI from the newsroom. That's the goal of this contract language. And more of, we think that people should be able to choose whether or not they use AI and how they use AI. And so I think that is an angle for us that's been really helpful and useful, because I think everyone can agree, like, we don't want management telling us we are forced to use these tools that a lot of times are incredibly unhelpful and take up a lot of time. So that's kind of a way that we've approached it. That's been really rewarding for us. Yeah.
Sorry. On the first question around sort of for staff on unions, our union staff, right, about the efficiency and time saving. I think that, like, what I would say is, when it comes to like data input, we gather like 1,000 bargaining surveys, then we have to like input everything from those bargaining surveys. I would say that, like, the model is, we don't need to be fast. We need to take our time, and we need to think about how do we use every tool to build the union. And so when we do bargaining surveys now, we used to have like our researchers who would spend like hours and hours inputting that, and then they would process that information, get it back to us. Now we have our committees sit down, we collect those bargaining surveys, each of us input 10 of those together, and it becomes a process where we're collectively looking at those things. And so really it is like, why do I need to do this quickly? What is the point? What is the process? What is the value of the process? Because I think, like, if we're going to AI, which, in our union, our position isn't AI is all bad. Our position is, we're just cautious. We're concerned. We want people to be safe. If that has value for you, then, use as you want. But I personally think that there's value in process in how we do things, and that we want to be building the union all the time with everything that we do. And sometimes we end up in kind of a service model of unionism when we just do everything for everyone as quickly as possible. And we don't actually build our leaders. We don't actually strengthen our membership by doing that.
I'm probably not the best person for the IP question, but I've got a little bit on it. Yeah, I mean, obviously there is a lot of tension between, trying to provide protections for IP, and then obviously, looking at the exploitation and extraction from that. There are a few things that have been, that are on the federal legislative calendar, kind of related to that. There's a lot of labeling resolutions and bills kind of in the works. We'll see what happens with those. But it's really, I think a lot of that's going to end up being driven by the corporations, unfortunately, because they own most everything. And that's how we're finding it, at least within the film industry and entertainment industry, is, Disney is the most distraught at the fact that, their own materials, if they, repackage them using these methods, may not suddenly belong to them. And they are one of the companies that is the most exploitive of getting rid of the original creators and not compensating them, not giving them attribution, doing all of these things. I did forget this, and since it kind of relates, I'm going to say it aloud so that my union feels like I did my due diligence. IATSE does have a very comprehensive federal agenda that all the members can follow along with. You can submit things to the political legislative committee. I do think it is a pretty good tool that we have for those who are politically involved. There's a section about establishing safeguards to ensure the fair and ethical use of artificial intelligence tools. And basically the acts that we're following are the Copyright Labeling and Ethical AI Reporting Act. That's the CLEAR Act that was sponsored by Representative Schiff. The Transparency and Responsibility for Artificial Intelligence Networks, that's TRAIN. And let me see, I'm gonna butcher this. So TRAIN was originally Senator Peter Welsh. And then also we have in the House Representative Madeline Dean from Pennsylvania. All of these were Democrats that were the primary sponsors, no surprise there. It's something that we're following, and I think, again, we're never going to get the legislation we need around these topics. So again, we're going to go back to contracts always. And for IP stuff especially, I think it's going to be very important that any industry that does have someone that is a creator, that is someone who is a writer, a performer, even writing a medical paper, research paper, things like this, you have ownership over that. And so if you have a bargaining unit, great. If not, try to form one and start putting it in a contract. I think that's going to be our most effective way to battle these things and deal with the verses of what we make and put into the world.
All right, I think we have time for another round here, so I'll bring it around.
Hello. First of all, I want to thank the panel. It's been a really insightful discussion so far. And I just want to say, right now, it feels like, the tech industry is building this huge narrative, right, societal-wide narrative that AI is the future. You can't escape it. If you don't use AI, you'll die, like you mentioned. It's going to take over all our jobs. We're all going to be replaced. But at the same time, we see, right, if you overly rely on AI, people's skills and knowledge deteriorates. We see the quality of work and the quality of output is decreasing. So I guess my question to you all is, how much do you guys worry and take that maximalist narrative that they're creating? How much do you take that seriously? How much of that do you think is BS and marketing hype? And then also, how do we as labor take control of that narrative and build a worker-centric narrative for the future of AI and these technologies that are affecting us all? Thank you.
Hi, I'm actually a public school teacher up in Canada, and I just kind of was curious what sort of admin support that you get when you find students who are using AI, because right now when I find a student using it, it makes my job about 10 times harder, and I will admit there are times where I've turned a blind eye because I truly don't have the capacity to deal with it. And I teach online. I teach grade 5 and 10 and 11 online, and so I can't even like make a kid write it on paper. So yeah, if you have advice or anything like that, that'd be aces.
Hi, everyone. I'm Andrew. I work with Sean, who did a wonderful job facilitating. This is actually builds on the question of the gentleman in the front, which is like, I can't help but feel that we have to be on the defensive when talking about AI. What's the wisdom that you have, if there is any, with regards to like, I don't know, having AI be more of a worker-centric vision? And I can give like a concrete example of that, of like, well, we're supposed to be 10 times more productive with AI. Can I get a 4-day work week out of that, for example? Just provoking that question.
Good afternoon. My name is Bill Baker. I'm from the News Guild of New York. And in other circles, I'm also known as DJ Dollar Bill. And you'll understand why I said that in a second. So Maggie's heartfelt presentation inspired this question, but others on the panel can also answer. So as a DJ, there are go-to songs that you play to get people dancing. One of those songs is Step in the Name of Love by an artist named R. Kelly, who was arrested and convicted in 2019 for sex trafficking, child pornography, among other crimes, right? So I attended an event for the National Council of Negro Women, a very prestigious organization, where the DJ played this song, and the reaction was immediate. And he immediately changed the song. And as DJ Dollar Bill, I have not played that song since. So peer pressure works. So the question is, how can we use that same peer pressure, especially when producers are using AI to produce content? Can we, sort of get messaging out there as union members, as people, to say that we should not be purchasing content that is made by AI?
Hi, I'm Claire Whitehouse. I'm a member and co-president of University of Vermont Staff United. We're going into bargaining in October and looking to put in a whole slate of AI protections. And preliminarily looking at our bargaining survey, which has closed, but I haven't officially started analyzing. Our members are just, as much as they are worried about job security, they're also worried about AI's potential impacts on the environment. So I'm wondering how people have used the environmental concerns around AI in pushing contract protections and also perhaps engaging the community. The University of Vermont draws a lot of students interested in environmental work. We like to laud our sustainability goals, and yet we have a president who is really heavily pushing AI. So how do we, hold our institutions to account and also bring in community through leveraging the environmental concerns?
Hello, Brandon from Northwest Washington, and representing a public sector local. One of the things that has recently scared the holy living hell out of me is one of my 911 dispatch centers has introduced AI to answer non-emergent calls. And the challenge is that our own leadership and members didn't tell me about it until it was already installed. And when we were talking about it through labor management, realized that our members are just hoping it works because they are so understaffed and trying to focus on their own jobs. And to give you an idea as how bad 911 is right now, they're funded for 35 full-time dispatchers and they only have 19 to 20 active. So my question for the panel Because my understanding is 911 centers are implementing both non-emergent and have been implementing emergent AI answering. And I'm just curious, do you have some thoughts on how we think about something that is such a critical function and has already, we already seem to be so far behind on this. Do you have some thoughts as to how we might be able to take this back from a broader policy perspective? Because this is one little center, and I know there are a ton of them out there. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that question. Just a couple more here.
Yeah, hi, my name is Ava. I work in tech, and I'm wondering if any of you have experience with contract language around demanding efficiency through AI as the equivalent of a speed up without additional compensation.
Hi all, my name is Logan. I'm also a tech worker at a mid-sized federal agency with International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers. My question is how, if at all, folks are preparing for an increasingly likely life after AI. It is the money-losingest technology that humanity has ever invented. It is increasingly looking likely that the massively inflated stock bubble is going to go down with AI, and once companies have to start paying full price for it, or accurate price for it, taking down our pensions, our retirement funds, other worker savings with it, and also the jobs that have been displaced by AI all of a sudden not being done by anything when the boss no longer wants to pay for tokens. So I'm curious how folks are trying to play a plan for that potential eventuality.
All right, thank you. Anyone on the panel ready to go?
Yeah, I can take a stab. Y'all have really good questions. I'm intimidated. We're so smart in this room. So I think like when we're thinking about ways that we can, kind of reclaim AI and use it for workers, I think like this idea of like the 4-day work week, as you were mentioning, like, yeah, we need to get more creative with it. I think that's a great idea of how can we be strategic and make mischief and cause trouble for management. If they're going to force us to use these tools, encourage us heavily to use these tools, then we should, take advantage of that. And so I think those are all like really great ideas of thinking like, how can we use that? Whether it's like, for example, like working with like in contract language to say that's like a speed up, or if we're thinking 4-day work week. There are so many excellent ways. I think we really have to start thinking outside of the box. And I think also too, when we're talking about life after AI, I think that it's really important for us to, when we're like making contract language, to make sure that it can last as long as possible. Because we ultimately, like AI already has moved so fast that a contract 2 years ago that mentions AI is going to be maybe completely irrelevant now. So in drafting that language, being really, really careful to ensure that it has longevity. That if AI goes down in flames and we have a life after AI, ensuring that we still are keeping protections, I think that's really important. So I think it's when drafting this contract language, just thinking about how much things have already changed, and it's gone so fast. I miss the days where like you would find a stock image on Google Images and it wasn't AI. So it's moved so fast. So just making sure that we are taking steps to proactively try to like predict where it's going to go and make sure that we're being broad with our language.
So I'll address the question about, I think it was AI support for admins from online classes. This has been difficult. In our contract, we try to negotiate like in-person testing for all, or it would be the faculty members' choice if they could have in-person testing as part of their online class, right? Because we just don't know who's even doing the work, right, for these online classes. So if the student could come in for like one day and do that testing, and I see a head shaking, and exactly, that's our college's reaction as well. And we could label it as what we call a hybrid class, right? And that could be an impossibility. But then, so that's what we were trying. And then the online checker, like where you can take stuff online and it's like a computer browser lockdown, that's not the greatest thing either, and you probably know that. So the thing that my faculty are doing is they're doing one-on-one meetings with those people and talking through the material with them over Zoom, right? And I know that wasn't your question, but dude, they have to meet with like 80 students or something individually during finals week and go through all that stuff. So we tried to get it in the contract, try to get a solution I think would work. It doesn't feel like we're gonna be able to go that way. Also, your AI expectations in your course syllabus need to be clear, like it's equivalent for a lot of our faculty to plagiarism, right? They lump it all together.
You all are asking great questions around what is what are we trying to do? What is our collective vision? And we are met with such an incredible opportunity, folks. Look at us in this room, cross-sector, cross-issue. We are unified against this thing, and we have such a moment right now, right?
Yeah.
So, look, I know folks keep saying we're like behind the mark, and I think that's part of how we're sort of being conditioned to feel. You know, we're here. Look, I think part of the intent of AI is to make it harder and harder for us to learn to do things for ourselves and to become less competent, to replace ourselves in our own lives for the purpose of extracting wealth, right, out of our pockets. Things that we used to do for ourselves, we don't do anymore, right? You know, so I think like part of thinking about that when people are asking, so why isn't, you know, this is supposed to make our lives easier? I think if AI really had a role in doing that, then, and we had universal basic income, we were all housed, we had Medicare for all, right? We had all of these things, great. But really it's about making the lives easier of very few people and for them to line their pockets in this purpose. And so I think thinking through the systems and the power and what's happening behind all of this, I don't know what the answer is, sorry. But I do know that we have this moment and that it's going to take all of us. And I get the sense that all of you are really committed. And I am heartened by that.
All right, I got a couple. So for the maximalist, adopt or die, all that. You know, again, I work in a very practical field. However, I mean, we're not just a creative field, we're also a very technical one. I did help found the Advancing Technology Committee for my local, basically to deal with these very things. Like, we know that at some level we are going to be adopting any sort of, you know, additional evolving or advancing technology that, yes, increases efficiency, you know, makes workflows better, things like that. And in no way are we, like, resisting that is a rather futile thing. Like, you should embrace things that make your work easier. Again, it's when it takes work away without you being able to transition and grow with it that it becomes problematic. I don't see cause for, you know, concern that it's taking over or that we all have to embrace fully all aspects of it, for sure. And I think we can still push against the ones that are not ethical and you know, and are dangerous. As for the contract language demanding efficiency, specifically in tech, I can understand that being an issue. And really in any industry, efficiency is the goal, right? Currently in the entertainment ones for motion picture, we don't have anything related to efficiency, but what we do have are clauses for mutual adoption, at least, so that we're recognizing that if the company wants you to use it, the person who's being asked to use the technology also has to agree to it. And vice versa. If they wish to use it in their workflow, they must inform the employer and the employer allow it. So in that way, I think that we have a very good relationship set up there to build on, so that as increased efficiencies do happen, they aren't necessarily pressed into, again, having a heavier workload in the same, you know, in the same amount of time. And as on the creative side of things, I really truly feel anyone who has the ability to take the same amount of time to create, you know, your thing. Take that time. Just because you can do it faster, take your time. They're not expecting it faster, and if they are, that's Too bad. So the peer pressure thing, that plays into that as well. The labeling aspect has come up a lot in the industry. Labeling things that have been created through some sort of process like this. And again, we're not at a place where that's really going to be terribly effective. And it's also research and like past efforts related to similar type things have shown that it's not really an enforceable thing, unfortunately, either. So it's nice, and there are groups that have popped up who are saying, hey, we're going to only promote things made fully without, these systems, without generative technologies. And I think that's fantastic, and I think we need more of that. I'm not going to fault someone for using a tool, again, until it's replacing, the person and the performance. And in entertainment, of course, everyone has their own tastes. You have your own styles, and some people really like that fake, flat, soulless thing. Unfortunately, I think this is going to be the biggest in porn. That's how it always is. And I think that's where they're going to be learning a lot. So there's a lot of data that's going to be coming out of that, particular industry that's going to inform a lot of future legislation and inform future safeguards for using this technology. And lastly, I want to thank you for bringing up environmental impacts, because I keep forgetting to mention it. This is a huge, huge, huge thing. I didn't just found the Advancing Technology Committee, I'm also one of the early members of our union's Sustainability Committee, and we have a lot of overlap of members between those two committees because they go hand in hand. Anyone not thinking about the environmental impacts of the adoption, the data centers, everything that's going in this, it's not just water, it's our air, it's our land use, it is our energy that is being diverted, and then we get charged more. And these companies are having, very, very low investment costs. They're getting all kinds of tax breaks, all kinds of things that they are getting that we are not getting, and in fact, we have enhanced costs from this. So it's not just an environmental cost that we're seeing very immediately, but also real money, financial costs that we're seeing already. So I think that is a very, very good way, especially if you can put stuff like this in a contract, of demanding from the companies requiring use of these products to make some sort of, not just a promise, but like literally putting in an agreement that there's going to be some sort of offset that they agree to. So that's another way we can go about this.
All right, I think that just about concludes things here. I did want to note, as we had the one question, that I also believe that the bubble will soon burst. And a lot of what we're doing at this point is just pushing back on the kind of collective delusion of this latest financial hype cycle for as long as we have to until we can get through the other side. So I think that helps us keep going a little bit. Remember that we are in the right. We're the ones who are seeing what's actually going on, who know how this works. Kinsley, I did want to ask if you could remind us of that chant that you were doing at your...
I haven't. I don't think I've actually done it as a chant, but we have a little slogan, and it's called "No Slop in Our Shop." So, yeah, it's a good one. Not gonna lie. And I've never led a chant before, so this is a learning experience for all of us.
Yeah.
But I'm going to say no slop, and you're going to say our shop. And we're going to do it 3 times. This is what I've just now decided. Okay, ready? No slop.
Our shop.
No slop.
Our shop.
No slop.
Our shop.
Yay! Good job, everyone.
All right. Our panelists were Vanessa Koh, John Hasegawa, Kinsley Searles, and Maggie Ann Gall. Thank you all so much for attending, and thank you to our wonderful panelists.
Thank you.